Good morning to Dr. Maslawati and my fellow friends. Today, my group member and I are going to present on normal speech error and how they happen from idea to word. First of all, I would like to introduce myself, Yong Hua In, and my group member, Muhammad Nur Hifsan bin Nordan, Muhammad Sobri bin Suhaili, Genevieve Anak Richard Sanak, and Catherine Levan Kahim binti Abdullah. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the normal speech errors. So normal speakers are adult speakers who are using their native language and who are rarely or never get noticed as by the people around them as having problem with speaking, hearing, reading, or writing that language. And normal speakers also those who are able to communicate what you mean and to understand what the people around you mean at the rate and level of sophistication that brings you satisfaction in your personal and professional life. The normal speech errors, okay, there are 5 normal speech errors. Okay, we will look at 2 kinds of production errors, which are slip of the tongue, tips of the tongue state, and 3 kinds of perception errors, Mondegreens, malapropism, and slip of the ear. So for the first one, slip of the tongue. In psycholinguistic, tongue slip are one kind of speech errors which are regarded mostly as errors of articulation. According to Serendriel Shatter 2004, it is a complicated mental processing which is happening entirely below the level of consciousness, so we're not a way of doing anything except when we hear ourselves saying something funny, and it's all happening at such lightning speed that we are not aware of any time these steps are taking. So these are some of the examples of slip of the tongue. Okay, there are a few types of the slip of the tongue. So we are going to look at the first one, shift. The example given here is that so she'll be ready in case she decides to hit it. And the correct one is supposed to be decides to hit it. And the second is exchange. Fancy getting your raised nose. The correct one should be getting your nose remolded. And we have other types like anticipation for back my bike. Okay, it's supposed to be take my bike. And others example like perseveration, addition, deletion, substitution, and blend type with the example given in the table. Okay, we will move on to the next slide for tips of the tongue state. Tip of the tongue state also can be considered as TOT. So the tip of the tongue phenomenon is the subjective feeling that people have of being confident that they know the target word for which they are searching, yet they cannot recall this word. They are somewhat able to recall words of similar sounds and meaning, but never the actual word they are seeking. When one experiences this phenomenon, it appears that one is having a breakdown in an intermediate stage of lexical retrieval. Lexical retrieval is a search for a desired word in a human's memory storage. Okay, these are the examples of TOT. I'm going to explain on the first picture with the 2 women are discussing a particular new cream that is believed to have amazing benefits. One of them has recently purchased it and is telling her friends to try it too. However, try as she might, she cannot recall the name of the cream, though she can remember that it starts with an L. She knows the benefit, she recalls how it feels and smells, she remembers what letter it started with, but she cannot retrieve the name of the cream from her memory. Okay. The second example is related to a student who is attempting a question in his midterm history. he can remember the answer to that question, and he know what is it about and what page it is on in his textbook. He can remember everything, but he just cannot remember target words or the phrase that he's searching in his memory. Mondegreens. So Mondegreens is the misunderstood or misinterpreted word or phrases resulting from a mishearing of the lyrics of a song. Next, we will look at the example. Okay, here are few examples that I list down in the table. We look at the first one. Okay, he threw a pair of dice, and it is from the song Paradise. The actual lyrics is Dream of Para Para Paradise. And the second example, You Shed It Out. It is from the Song of Titanium. Okay, the actual lyrics is You Shout It Out. Okay, next is malapropism. Malapropism is the act of using an incorrect word in place of one that is similar in pronunciation. The words comes from a character named Mr. Malaprop in the play The Rivers by Richard Brinsley Sheridan. So the example here can be shown in the dialogue between a client, okay, and the shop, a bookstore shop. Do you do lemonade? Okay, then the me answer, do we do lemonade? So yes, I was told that you do that. I'm sorry, this is a graphic and print shop. I know that I'm not an idiot. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Look, if you can't laminate these papers from me, then I'll go somewhere else. So actually, the laminate in this dialogue is actually referring to laminate. So the clients misunderstood the words. So she considered laminate as laminate. Next. Slip of the year. Slip of the year is an error of misperception in listening, mistaking a word or phrase for a similar sounding word or phrase in speech or conversation. So the example given here, the first one, great app, okay, is actually great tap. Don't cry for me, March and Tina. And the correct one should be don't cry for me, Argentina. And the last one, row, row, row your boat, life's a but a dream. But the actual one is actually row, row, row your boat, life is but a dream. Okay. After we look at the Mondegreens and malapropism, we can know that the only psycholinguistic difference between Mondegreens and malapropism is that Mondegreens is embedded in mismemorized lyrics of a particular song, but malapropism is a word in person's vocabulary psycholinguistic called this their mental lexicon. So even if a speaker makes speech errors, but as long as people around them understand what he means and able to communicate with each other, he is a normal speaker. But here are the main groups of people who would not be considered to meet the clinical definition of normal speaker. So those are the first language learners, second language learners, people with developmental disorders, dyslexia or brain damage, and the last one is people with late onset hearing loss. So for the first language learners and the second language learners, they are considered still in the developing stage. For example, the first language learners, they have to take times to master the skills of a language. So they cannot be considered as the normal speaker. This goes, is the same with the second language learner. Even though some of the second language learners, they are adult, but they still take times to master their second language, the third language, or the fourth language. So they cannot be considered as the normal speaker until they had already mastered the skills. Whereas for the people with developmental disorder, dyslexia, or brain damage, they are people who are not developing or learning normally, and people with developmental language disorder, including dyslexia, are not fully language normal speaker. So people who have suffered brain damage, they are not language normal, but if their language disorder is very specific, or their brain damage is limited to a very small volume, they may be normal in every other measurable way. And the last one, people with late onset hearing loss, they are the people who lost their hearing as adult, whether gradually or suddenly, are by definition no longer normal speaker or hearer. So people who have had a severe hearing loss as young adult usually start to show abnormal patterns in the pitch and loudness of their voice after many years of being unable to hear themselves and others speak. That's all from me. Thank you. I'll pass to the next presenter.
I'll proceed on the language production, which is on describing the basic processes. Okay, next. So it is defined as the production of both productive skills in a language that consists of speaking and writing. So basically, it describes all the stages between having a concept and translating it into linguistic form. So these stages have been described into two types of processing models, which are the lexical access models and the serial models. Psycholinguists can investigate how speech is produced in different ways. For example, whether that particular person is bilingual or even having speech-related disorder such as aphasia. By then, they learn more about these models and different kinds of speech by using language production research methods that include collecting speech errors and elicited production tasks. So, there are 5 stages in speech production level. The first level of production will be message level. The processes concerned which choosing what of all that's currently in our mind that we are going to try to put into words. So the second one will be functional level, where the processes of finding or arousing the words that we need to convey on what we were trying to say to make a meaning of it, and getting the nouns or pronouns linked to the roles that the people or things played in that particular event. The third one will be positional level, which is we fill in the details and getting the phrases set up and getting the words into the right phrases into the right order. The fourth one will be phonological encoding level, whereby we get the sound of the words in the right order. And last but not least, speech gesture level, where we actually pronouncing them correctly. Okay, next, I'll show you the schematic diagrams of these 5 levels. Okay, as you can see, we only focus on the first 2 kinds of processes, in which involve choosing what to put into words, finding the needed words, and getting them linked to their roles in the particular event. Put them together, so these levels will help us to imagine the thing in our head that gives us the power of the speech. Organizing these processes into levels or sub-levels doesn't mean that each level is isolated from each another, but it assemble the metaphor is not a good approximation to what it is going on into the brain. So it's just what we can't describe everything at once, but we start by taking them in terms of levels or step by step, which is on 3.3, choosing what to put into words and what to focus on. that concerns on the message level, which is the first stage. So we know that the message level is where our brains choose what we will put into words. So what our story will turn out to be. So it's a conceptual level where it occurs without the use of any language, although the way it works is affected by our language. We can think that it consists of three parts, such as picking the story's angle, activating the concepts of the people and things needed to mention, and organizing what had happened into event structures, which is the basic chunks of who did what to whom. At the end of this message level processing, our brain will get a close size chunk of this conceptual information that is well organized for actual language processing to begin with. So the the concepts that are activated will depend a lot on how detailed the speaker's visualization of the scene. Meaning to say, it is how we convey our message, on how specific the thing is. If we just speak out of a vague things, then our listeners will can't imagine how that particular thing works. So if the story angle calls more vividness, the speaker may have to wait a few tenths of a second so that more of the details can come into mind. Meaning to say, we need to tell bits by bits, details by details, so that our listeners can imagine how the thing happened clearly. So this message level is pre-linguistic processing. It is not about the words yet, just the concepts. So these concepts are the basis for finding words that may start occurring at the functional level. Okay, the third aspect of message level will be organizing the concept of the event into what we are we say that as event structure. So this is where the ideas will be packed into each clause, and which details of action will we as the speaker give, or maybe dozens of other things that would build up the listener's mental picture of what had happened. So the event structure will be the speaker's basis of activating the appropriate verbs and choosing the words that tell listeners whether the action those verbs describe it is stopping, starting, or continuing. Meaning to say our articulation or our stress in pronouncing words are important, so that this is how he start, or this is how he stop. Okay, he's posing somewhere. Okay, like that. Next. Okay, part B1. People with traumatic brain injury or having right hemisphere strokes sometimes have problems with pragmatics. Using the ideas that we have developed, it is described that part of their problems as a trouble with organizing the message level of production in order to stay relevant and to find a diplomatic way to tell a story. Okay, for example, people with aphasia, they have no problems in choosing appropriate point of view, but they have problems in pragmatic. But for young children, there are lack of pragmatic skill in sharing the chronology of the story. Last but not least, an excited normal people may have pragmatic troubles also, because when they are too excited, they do not know how to arrange their story properly at that moment, because they want to tell almost everything. So we as the listener will be confused. Why sometimes he jump here, why sometimes he jump there, and then turn back here, turn around there, and here and there. With that, next, proceed to 3.4.
All right. So, Assalamualaikum and very good morning to Dr. Maslawati and all my fellow classmates. So, I'm going to continue the presentation with another subtopic under the numbering of 3.4, the functional level, part 1, lemmas. So, what is lemma and why does the model that we are discussing from the beginning need this, okay, need lemma. So basically lemma is an abstract conceptual form of word that has been mentally selected for utterance in the early stage of speech production. So actually lemma is not the meaning of the word, yeah, because the meaning of the concept overlap in a lot of way when we talk about language. So if lemma is a meaning, why can't we just say it as meaning instead of lemma? All right. So next slide. So we did this because a production model has to have some way to distinguish between pre-linguistic level of concept from the linguistic level of meanings. Okay, so this is because a single concept can often be expressed by many different words and combination of words. All right, so for example, if I want to refer to someone when we speak, when I speak to someone, let's say I want to talk about my neighbor, Mr. Ahmad. So what my listener needs to be able to figure out is how the person I'm talking about is connected to the story. Okay, if they know the person, I can just name the person. Okay, if they do not know my neighbor, so naming the neighbor might not be very useful at that time. Okay, so I might want to refer my neighbor as a guy who was buying a badminton racket, or my neighbor next door, for example. Then, okay, I might refer him to the suitable pronouns. For example, him, I saw him after that. Okay, or I saw the guy with a racket. So my point here is all of these different expressions are ways in referring or referring to the same person who is just a concept in our mind. So this is what is it meant by pre-linguistic concept. So how about linguistic meanings? Why do we need to have the term lemma for the word meaning? Okay, because finding a word in production, okay, has two steps. Okay, first of all is the finding the lemma. The second step is going from the lemma to the sound. Okay, it means that we might have the meaning, but we couldn't find the right word to say or resemble the meaning. So this condition is what we define as lemma. That's why we come up with the word dilemma. Okay, two lemma. We are not sure which is which. Okay. All right. Next. So now that we talk about speech error, okay, one of the most possible cause of speech error is when we activate the wrong lemma. Okay, sometimes we catch error as soon as it happened. Okay, sometimes we don't catch it ourselves, but people who listen to us do. Okay, I think we all experience this a lot as a listener, right? Okay? Sometimes nobody notices it at all, but if the conversation or the speech is tapped, then the error could be very obvious. So let's take a look at some of the examples. The everyday speech errors that we can easily find in everyday conversation. For example, my dissertation is too short. Actually, the speaker meant too long. He's going downtown. Actually, the speaker is trying to say he's going uptown. Before the place closes or before the place opens. Look at the lady with Dexon. Actually wanted to say Volkswagen. Okay, so on and so forth. So as you can see in the table, the first three errors are when the speaker said the opposite of what he or she intended to say. Okay, in these three cases, words and their opposite are closely linked in our mind. Okay, for example, the word short is very close to the word long. Okay, uptown is very close to the word downtown. Okay, close is very close to the word open. All right, next. So how do concept get connected so closely that they spread from one another? Okay, which concept gets connected closely enough to make substitution errors more likely? So to answer this question, we need to understand how we learn to group concept into categories. All right, next. Now the coordination relationship, whether it's a whole or part of a whole, suggests that the concept share characteristics in the form of logical relationship. Okay, when we teach children to speak, for example, we would introduce word concept. Okay, for instance, we say don't jump on the furniture, don't play with your food, pick up your toys, so on and so forth. So when we say don't jump on the furniture, we are not referring specifically to the object. Okay, we only say furniture as general. Okay, we don't go specific saying chair or table or what kind of furniture that the kids is jumping on. Okay, or don't play with your food. Okay, we are not being specific whether it's a rice or noodle or bread. Okay, pick up your toys. What kind of toys is it? The car, train, Barbie doll? Now, we also help them to put the words into categories. For example, when we say, look at the cars, trucks, and the trains, and the boats, and the planes, we say these words simultaneously together, okay, to help them categorize it into a category. Okay, or we say, pick up your crayons and markers and pens and pencils. Right. So a category seems to be a set of things that we use or interact with in a particular way, or how our history or real or imagined interaction with those things form the category in our minds. All right, next. Okay, now let's move on to the next subtopic. So in this subtopic, we are going to discuss on the type of error in a lemma stage. Okay, so first of all is the semantic categories and speech error. So as a normal speaker, we also tend to make error as we speak. Okay? Sometimes we say the opposite of what we really want to say. And because the concepts are close to each other or some words belongs to the same category, so the lemma is also activated up to some point where it substitutes the actual lemma. Okay, that's why we hear something like he's going downtown when he actually wanted to say uptown, or we say turn left when we actually meant right. All right, next. So besides that, we also do within category substitution error. Okay, so this happens when the concept in the message arouse another concept that has the members of some category that they both belong to. Okay, in other words, the concept that become activate our lemma, and because the lemma is stronger, it substitute the other lemma. Okay, that's why we hear something like look at the lady with the Dachshund when the speaker actually wanted to say Volkswagen, because both Dachshund and Volkswagen are things from Germany. Another example, like he is a good magician when he actually a musician. And recently I heard a person said we are having a visual presentation when it's actually a virtual presentation. Okay, so this happened because the substitution words came from the same category. Okay, moving on. So when the lemma can't compromise each other as they are activated, it tends to blend in with another lemma. Okay, so this is the another condition where both lemma are strong in equal, and then it blend together and produce a unique phonological form. Okay, for example, I really like the original Pink Panda. Actually, Pink Panther. Okay, while discussing the movie of Kung Fu Panda. Okay, or we say car dealsman, when actually a combination of car dealer and salesman. Or help what you want, when help yourself blended with take all you want. Okay, so I think that's all from me. So next, I'm inviting the next speaker to continue with the functional level part 2 semantic category.
Okay, thank you. So I will continue the presentation, which is the functional level, part 2, semantic functions. Okay, semantic functions is very close related with the part 1, which is lemmas just now. So semantic is propose the exact meaning of words or the phrases. Okay, and it is proposed to refuse the confusion by the learners or the readers or the listeners. And it also enables the person to explore the sense of meaning. For example, the meanings of the words and the phrases. Okay, next slide. Okay, semantic function. Okay, the story you want to tell, it have to activate the event structure, which is already mentioned by the previous speakers just now. And what your reference, which are the people or the things that you are talking about, did or what happened to them. Okay, the event structures is your concepts of who did what to whom in your story. So each event structure has to arouse an appropriate verb, the lemmas. For example, tease, frightened, or distracted. And then verb lemmas and noun lemmas are their meanings plus the grammatical information needed to use them. It includes the semantic roles or the semantic functions that will be job for the nouns and those verbs. For example, okay, as illustrated in figure, okay, as we can see, the agent is the uncle, and then the undergoer is the lion, and then the distract is uh, it distract the agent and the undergoer. Okay, based on the figure. Okay, this is the example story that we can create from the figure. Okay, my uncle distracted the lion, okay, which is your uncle is the agent, and then the lions are the undergoers. Okay, and then my brother was frightened, okay, which is your brother is the undergoer. So in this story, you have to be clear to who you refer to and what happened to them by having the agent and then having the undergoer, and also mention what distract them in the story to make the listener or the lead reader to understand your story. Okay. Language encodes our understanding of the events that are happening around us by somehow linking each thing, okay, that we talk about with a semantic function, such as the agent, the recipient, or the undergoer. Or if no semantic function fits with the theme, okay, I will give another example. Okay, next slide. Okay, the example, okay, the lemmas are tagged as John, tagged as the agent, while Susie is the recipient and cake is the theme. Okay, the link between the cake and its baker, okay, the baker is John in this story, okay, in all of the sentences, regardless of their syntax and whether the baker or the recipient are explicitly mentioned. Okay, this is simple story. Okay, John baked the birthday cake for Susie. Okay, Susie is the recipient this morning. Okay, Susie loved the cake John baked for her this morning, and the cake was baked this morning by John. Okay, the cake was the theme. Sometimes we don't need a noun or pronoun lemma to refer to the agent of the sentence in English. Okay, for example, there are no referring expression to say who is the agent because previously the agent is John. So sometimes we just talk it informally, such as we ask the person, okay, bake a cake last night. For example, usually we use this kind of speech when you are talking to the person directly and you already know or you are guessing who baked the cake. Okay, next, I'll give it to the next speaker.
Hello everyone, I will continue with the last part of this topic. Okay, so it's about the summary of the language production so far. Okay, so this is a summary of what we have already heard from the beginning of this presentation. So from ideas to lemmas and semantic roles, okay, uh, the first step in speaking is choosing what information you're going to put into words. Okay, so usually you will do this without thinking about it, but if it's difficult for some reason, You may become conscious of parts of the process of trying to figure out how to say what you mean, right? So at the message level, all right, this is where the information gets organized at the first step of language production. And at this level, it is all concepts, no words yet. So setting up the message level means activating the concept of your reference. And reference here refers to whom and what to mention. And also deciding who is the hero or what is the topic of the story. So at the message level, you also decide, which is usually done unconsciously, what sort of words we should use for referring. Okay, from a formal, whether it's from a formal to informal, fully spelled out or abbreviated, or just a pronoun, or even no referring expression at all. And you organize the things that are happening into event structures, which is usually built around verb concepts. So activation flows from the concepts at the message level to two kinds of information at the functional level, which are the lemmas and the semantic roles. So the concepts for the reference activate the noun or pronoun lemmas, which is the meaning of the words without the sound. And the event structure will activate the verb lemmas and the semantic roles. Here, lemmas don't have any order, but they are just tags. And the order that words come out is created at the positional level. So in short, basically this is what we have looked at. At the message level, you have actually already got the plot outline. While at the functional level, this is where you choose the roles and what they are going to do. However, you don't know exactly what they will look like, okay, or the precise order that they will appear in, okay, and that will be the next step. Next is managing traffic without a cop, a play, or without a director. So speaking is different from putting on a scene in a very important way. So inside your head, there is no director. There's no director inside your head. You can't say that your mind is the director because you are trying to explain how the mind itself works. If you explain the mind by putting another mind inside it, you'd have to explain how the inner mind works and so on. So this choosing part happens because some concepts are automatically aroused by something we see, hear, or remember. So in turn, activation automatically spreads from these concepts to some of the lemmas for the words that can be used to communicate information to someone. And the spread of activation is automatic. Its relative strength of activation is what matters. So mistakes at the functional level can happen, whereby two lemmas are activated to just about the same extent. For example, as it has been mentioned earlier about blend errors, whereby you mentioned we maybe accidentally said salesman when we wanted to say dealer and salesman. Okay, and it also happens when something else is on your mind or happening around you. Okay, so there is this is the last part of the presentation, applying the model to an aphasic speech production problem. So Shirley Kleinman, who told the story of a broadcast aphasia in Shirley Says Living with Aphasia, okay, was trying in an experimental test given to her, okay, to describe what was going on in the picture shown in figure 3.5, as you can see here. Okay, baseball hits the baby. So what actually happened was Shirley had essentially lost the ability to make passive voice sentences on her own. Okay. What she said was, the baby, no, the ball hit the baby. So the descriptions she settles on is correct. Okay, whereby the picture must have activated the right concepts and event structure at the message level. Okay, we have the ball, a small child, which she refers to as a baby, and a hitting event. So the ball in this event hits the baby, and Shirley is not confused about that. However, less important information doesn't distract Shirley from focusing on the main event at the message level. This information at the message level aroused two appropriate lemmas, which are ball and hit at the functional level, right? These two lemmas were able to activate their phonological forms at the positional level. So in the case of a baby, okay, which doesn't seem to be the best word for a child who looks like he can walk, okay, it's possible that the concept of at the message level sent activation to the lemmas of more complicated referring expressions like little kid and to a more precise but lower frequency word like toddler, as well as to the lemma of the not quite accurate word, which is baby. But Shirley produced the word baby. Okay, this is more likely because it is easier to activate, okay, rather than saying it as a toddler, because it is much more frequent, okay, to say it as a baby. So frequent words have a high resting level of activation, okay, that it doesn't take much new activation to get those lemmas up to the threshold for sending activation on to their phonological forms. So the lemma baby would have gotten less activation from the picture than the lemma toddler, okay, because the concept of a baby isn't a great match to the picture. But that small amount of input activation was able to give baby up to threshold so it could activate its phonological form. Okay, so the less frequent lemma, toddler, okay, would have needed a lot more input to reach threshold. And the last part is, okay, the event structure at the message level also sends activation so that the ball, okay, this is referring to the picture earlier, okay, so that the ball could be tagged as the inanimate cause of the hitting event and the baby could be tagged as the undergoer. So I think that's all for our presentation. Thank you very much.